Hello, everyone. We are live and we are welcoming Jay in few minutes. I'm just going to check if I am live and audible on LinkedIn and YouTube. What a blessing. This is already the seventh episode. We are doing that for the seventh week, and we have still 3 weeks to go in order to complete this amazing book club, diving into the 10 section, the 10 rules of engagement in storytelling. So I am audible on YouTube. That's a blessing. And I am audible on LinkedIn. Feel free to comment at any time to say hello to yes. So we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And I'm going to dive before I welcome this amazing friend who is Jay. I'm going to dive into my notes because I was doing lots of things. By the way, upside down. Lots of things. By the way, I was writing about emotions. 27 subsection of this rule be drawn. They are really digestible. I'm going to first quote them. But now I see also Jay is already there. So I'm going to welcome already Jay. Welcome, welcome. And I'm going to go through the 27 subsection and then we can start. So, Mr. J, we are talking about the seventh rule of engagement, which is emotions. But the right title, let me just check. Yes, the right title is Use Emotion, Incorporate Feelings and Sentiments into the narrative to reach the audience on a deeper, more empathetic level. And so here are the different subsections: emotion, the heartbeat of storytelling, the language of emotion. That's juicy. Then crafting emotional resonance. Then the embrace of emotion, building trust and relatability, inspiring and motivating customers, differentiating from competitors, fostering emotional connection, demonstrating values and purpose, identify core emotions and themes, craft compelling narratives, target practice. And then I was adding because my graphic was not enough, like I was not able to put the 27th or around. So I was having a part A, which is utilize multiple storytelling platforms, fostering emotional engagement through interaction, narrative navigation, establishing a relationship, then creating a connection, maintaining a relationship, building bonds, and then resolving, yeah, then preserve no conflict, preserving memories, yeah, resolving conflicts, preserving memories, growing a relationship, deepening intimacy, inspiring growth, creating um, shared dreams, and then friendships. It's a lot of of a mouthful, but it's really to realize that it's rich, my friends. I'm really blessed to dive into this book and to welcome the experts. So while I'm sipping my coffee, let us know who you are and what was your goal in writing this book. Thank you.
Yeah, Ali, thank you. By the way, I appreciate the time that um, and space that you've created for the book and for me. Um, we've spoken off and on for going I guess on 2 years now, um, and in various different forums and platforms. But I think that when we talk about engagement, right, it's the ability to resonate with somebody that, we can align on certain topics. And, while we don't agree 100% with everything that we talk about, there is a commonality in a lot of things that we talk about. And I think that's the core to what I was thinking about when it came to engagement. When we engage somebody, we're hoping that our communication, whatever it is effective enough that we're able to, again, relate and resonate with the other person. And that leads to a relationship. So at the end of the chapter, I talk about relationships, right? So emotion allows you to help get you to that point where you can establish that relationship. It's the quickest way to establish rapport. And engagement is that next step in that rapport. It just, again, and then beyond that, it's building a relationship. But to answer your question, the reason I wrote the book, The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling, was I've had so many experiences and a few mentors in my life as a storyteller and as a business person. And I've mentored myself, other storytellers in different capacities as a print journalist, as a on-air TV journalist, as a radio personality, and especially as an editor at a business journal. I've had many hats, right? I've worn many hats. And I wanted to encapsulate.
Oops, you are on mute. I don't hear you anymore. I don't know if it's in my side. Yes,
Let me just double check.
yes, no, it's
Okay.
all okay.
So so I wanted to encapsulate all of the knowledge and experience I've gained and I've shared throughout the years into a book. And 2 years ago, at the onset of this new AI age of technology, I said this would be a perfect time. We need to get back to the basics. What people are doing right now is they're relying on AI to provide all the content that they produce these days, including students, right? Teachers and professors are having a hard time trying to ensure that students are learning and that the curriculum is being followed and that they're not using chat gpt to turn in all those papers that are normally due. It's become, they're using AI to sniff out AI in a lot of places. But I thought really at the very beginning of all this that there was going to be a need out there for people to really understand storytelling and the power that storytelling has. And I thought this would be a ripe time. Now, for those of us who have resisted using AI and are maybe even contemplating using it now, here's the one thing you have to remember. We're still having to put prompts into AI to get some piece of content. The origination of that content, whatever it is still going to have to come from you, an actual human being with thoughts, feelings, and emotions. There's one thing to be said about algorithms, and there's another to be said about human emotions. The algorithm can synthesize emotion, but the human being feels it. And if you can allow yourself to feel the emotion as you're writing or sharing your story, others would align with it, feel it, and resonate and understand it from a totally deeper perspective. And that's why the rule of engagement in storytelling, the chapter 7, use emotion, is important. One thing I don't think I've made clear is each chapter, each rule, at the end of each rule, each chapter, there is target practice, following with the theme of the rules of engagement, right? It's a military term used these days when they engage combatants. And so at the end of it, I use the term target practice. Essentially, you want to be on target with the chapter, and you want to have the practical application of what you just learned. And so I ask you a couple of questions to just jog your memory of what you just read. And then that's going to help you understand, hopefully, the chapter. Following target practice, I give you another extra nugget that may or may not be related to the rule. And it's the narrative navigation, right? Whenever you're on the battlefield, you have to navigate your way through the terrain. And that's why I named it that. And the reason I'm laying this out for you right now is I'm really disappointed in Amazon at the moment because they have systematically said the book does not apply to the subjects that I've placed the book under. And I'm going to respectfully disagree with them because I'm going to stay with the premise of why I wrote this book. Every part of this book and everything that we do when we communicate at the core of it is a story. And it's in brand building, it's in content creation, it's in employee engagement, it is in everything. Any communication that we encounter in our lives, it's going to be related. Now, the rules can be read separately and out of order if you wanted to. And that's fine. I wrote it so that you can pick it apart and use each individual rule independently so that it can work for you. But together in its totality, all the chapters, it's going to help you write a story. It's going to help you share your story in its totality. So I respectfully disagree. And I know that it's been a long explanation, but I wanted to share with you my thoughts basically on the importance of storytelling and the power of storytelling and how it can impact almost every facet of our life. And so at the end of this chapter, and in narrative navigation, the part that I talk about that's an additional nugget, I talk about being a best man at a wedding and being called upon to give a best man speech. Right. It is one of those things. It's prevalent today. I don't, when I was growing up, there wasn't a best man speech. We had what we would call a fandango, where at the end of the wedding, we would celebrate the union of these two people. How I started to be thinking about becoming a poet even at all was when one of my uncles recited a poem for a cousin who just got married. So at the fandango, at the wedding celebration, the wedding party, he recited this poem and I was captivated. The poem by Maya Angelou, or the saying by Maya Angelou, really comes into play. I don't recall the words. I don't recall the actual poem itself, but I remember how it made me feel. I was so proud that a man of my culture was a poet. And then I further learned that he was a poet laureate designated by the governor of Guam at one point. And that was an inspiration to me. Stay with me because this is all important. The reason that I do what I do, the reason why I wrote the book, the reason why I'm trying to live in my purpose as a storytelling strategist, a storyteller at all, is because of all the things that I've experienced in my life. I'm not a traditional scholar. I've never purported to be a college graduate, and I'm not. What I am is a student of life and a scholar of life, and the experiences that I've gained, I want to help others share their story and do it in such a way that it will impact others, hopefully in a positive way that will encourage others to tell their stories. as well. Yes, it was a long explanation of why I wanted to write this book and why I'm doing what I'm doing. But if you can hear it, I just demonstrated the emotion, that I have related to storytelling. I think that's an example. But Ali, the very first subchapter, the title is Use Emotion. And I'm going to read the very first sentence. Emotions serve as the glue that binds the audience to the narrative. It is one of the many arts of storytelling. It's the glue. And I will argue as well that it's what makes a person stick to the story.
I love that.
Pun
I
intended.
love that. And also, I was realizing that it glues the audience to the narrative. And at the same time, it's really important to know what is the kind of narrative that you're going to tell, and what is the kind of audience that's going to receive it. And I will use this metaphor of we don't use the same glue for iron or for copper than for wood. We need a different kind of glue. We have to adapt to find the perfect glue that will stick the audience to the narrative, because at some point with you cannot really glue the same with the same glue iron, wood, paper, ceramic, whatever. You need different kinds of glue. So it means that you have to know your audience. That's one of the first rules. And you have also to be clear about the narratives, what you are going to share, what you are going to avoid. And also at some point, especially when it comes to interaction, depending on the type of medium, because you are not doing the same when you are writing articles and books or when you are in front of a live audience on the room, you have to dance and adapt to the audience, because either they are giving you a clue, like, and they are not really appealed to your story, or either they are asking questions and you say, I realize my audience is upset about this, about that, so I'm going to switch and to not talk about A, but to talk about B, because it's about I receive the feedback from my audience. This is what they want to receive from me. So it's also to dance and to adapt live in your story, and to let go. And there is your plan, and there is God's plan or the audience plan. And so it's really to realize that what is the purpose to tell your story. It's not about you, because you know already your story. You probably told hundreds of times, hundreds of different times. But what makes the audience glue to your story? And so you are not going to tell the same story in front of corporate business top 100 CEO and children. You have to use different techniques to captivate the audience. You are going to talk about the business. You're not going to talk about children playful stuff on the corporate, and you are not going to talk about corporate and business and brands on top of the children. You have to adapt. So it's really and before I yield the mic, it's like when I really feel you when it's about Amazon, and that it's like saying, storytelling is just the heart, just the liver, just the lungs, just the head, but storytelling is the backbone. And without the backbone, without it's like storytelling is the nervous system. Let's say like that also. Without the nervous system, you don't have anything glued. And so I think it's central. It's the common sense. Without our nervous system, we are not living beings. because our nervous system is protecting us. And emotions is part of our humanity. We are flesh, blood and flesh and organs. We are like this, imperfect being. And it's also to realize that our audience is not GPT. Our audience is not machines. So although I wouldn't say that we have to resist to use ChatGPT, but it's also to realize it's a tool. And at the same time, our brain is in the driver's seat. Do we would we let ChatGPT in the driver's seat and not use our brain as critical thinking and to say, I don't feel it in my gut. I'm going to adapt or to change the prompt or to use other things. Or will you be copy pasting ChatGPT and become ambulatory ChatGPT in human bodies? So that's really because we are connected from heart to heart. It's good that we have a brain, but we have also a body and a heart. And that's why I really love emotion in storytelling. So now I'm really yielding the mic.
Ali, thank you. I like your analogy here. Let me take it a step further. Imagine this, right? You're looking at this story, and if if we're to be like Amazon, they're going to say, well, you're you're talking about one particular topic, so we have to look at the brain, and so the brain is our focus, and so the book doesn't really talk about the brain in depth. So we're going to take you out of this particular subject matter. However, my book is not about one particular organ in the body. I'm talking about the entire body, the entire makeup of the body. And that to me is why when you have many chapters together in a book, it's called a body of work. You have to take everything together in its totality to see the merit or the value of what you're reading. And apparently they didn't read my book because they would know. I just get I get so frustrated because I'm such an evangelist about storytelling, and to take me out of any topic related to how the book should be presented or be put out there, marketed, whatever, is an affront to the whole reason why this book exists. Your analogy, I think, is great, but to put it together in something that people will understand is we can't just look at the brain. We can't just look at the heart. We can't just look at appendages, singular, on its own, individual. We have to look at the entire body. And when you do that, you're going to find an actual person. And so the same is true for your story. If you have characters and a storyline and you have a beginning, middle, and end, but if you don't have a heart at the core of your story, then you're missing a part of that body. The opportunity to connect with your audience on a much, much more deeper level. And I think if you're a person who wants to have an impact, you're going to have to face the emotional part of anything. So the first sentence in the next subchapter of this is, well, the subtitle is Heartbeat of Storytelling. Huh. I knew I was going somewhere with this. At its core, storytelling is a dance of emotions, a delicate interplay between the storyteller and the audience. I'll read the next line as well. Like a skilled dance instructor leading an ensemble, we must harness the raw energy of human emotion to line up narratives that resonate deeply with our audiences. I'm the dance instructor. Everybody, spirit fingers. That was a fun movie, by the way. Anyway, the thing that we have to remember is we're human beings. And a majority of us on this planet, we connect based on those emotions. And I've said it multiple times just in the last 6 months. What binds us as human beings across the globe, we may not know each other's politics. We may not understand each other's politics. We may not know each other's sporting events and the meaning and the history and all of that. We may not agree on each other's faith or religion. But what we can do and what we have done for many centuries is connect with one another based on emotion. I know what it's like to lose a loved one. I grieve much in the same way anybody else does. The funerary practices, the memorials and things, how we do it, how we go about it, grieving, societal wise, may be different in Guam than it is in Ghana. But we still grieve. I may find something hilarious, a pratfall, a little humor in tragedy. We can relate to divert our heart away from what hurts. We laugh at something else. We know what that's like, right? I may not laugh at some cultural nuance that somebody points out in Belgium. We may laugh at different things, but we still laugh. We find humor in things. Sadness, we know what that's like. As a child, wanting to go out and play with your friends, and it rains, what happens? That child gets sad. And the nursery rhyme that we sung, it may be in a different language, but it's still the same nursery rhyme. Rain, rain, go away, come back another day. Little Jay wants to play. Rain, rain, go away. That little melancholy kid. I don't know what that song sounds like in French, but I'm sure it's the same. And the sentiment is the same. And we understand it whether or not we understand each other's language. What we do understand is the language of emotion. That's why I can sit and watch a foreign film even without subtitles. It makes it difficult, but if you just look and see how people are reacting on the screen and acting on the screen, you're going to get the gist. It's how people learn how to speak a language in the first place,
Yeah,
based on the
and first
emotions.
the non-verbal language. That's why the first films were silent, and everyone was understanding because the language was non-verbal. There were no words spoken. And then at some point it was subtitled, like Charlie Chaplin was some subtitled in different languages, but the acting was non-verbal. So this kind of Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy, this kind of silent films that the language was non-verbal. And that was fostering emotions because even if it was spoken, if we don't understand what they say, you see the acting. Like I remember of this amazing, funny and also very on point scene was My Name is Nobody. Il mio nome è nessuno. Mon nom est personne. From Terence Hill, and he was acting. And at some point, what I like is when the activism was already there in the 60s, was a scene where a guy in the feria was allowing people to throw pies on the head of a black man. I don't know if you remember the scene if you have watched this movie. And at some point, the persona was really pissed off to see that. What he do? He did. He was taking a pie, but he was taking a piece of the wood of a table, and he was trying at that guy that was making this feria. And that scene was really compelling, really emotional also, because like okay, you are making fun of a black guy, and here is now you will receive the punishment about that. And like it was a powerful scene. So even whatever language it is, you will understand this scene. This scene that is the actor was punishing the person who was doing bad behavior on the spite of someone else, to love on a cultural aspect. So that was compelling. So the scene of Charlie Chaplin and the kid, very universal. No word spoken, but very universal to see Charlie Chaplin evolving with this kid. So, in order to evoke emotions, we have to tap into also our audience culture. I wonder how Chinese, Mandarin, and Chinese people or Indian people are receiving movies in English, or like I'm really blessed to see the reactions between across cultures. I was reminding myself was indigenous people in the Amazonian forest that were approached, and we making connections. And at some point, they were sharing. It was a French crew, and they were sharing some videos about what's happening in the modern world in France. And they were saying, "Whoa, why are they like that?" So they were emotionally attached, even though they were not understanding our world, our modern world. They were emotionally attached and really genuinely caring about what's happening into our modern world. And back then, sharing to the modern audience what were their thoughts about what they've seen, like the 9/11 bombing, with the plane, all these kind of things. And so they were reacting with their own emotions and cultures. So we might not express the emotions the same. Like Chinese people are laughing and crying differently if they show also they're crying, because they are quite, I assume, but they are quite a bit like shy on expressing their emotions. But they have emotions anyway. They might not be expressing the same, but they are having emotions. What I really crave is that no matter what, that we don't repress anyone to express their emotions. It's really important, because when emotions are not expressed, then it becomes disease and then disease. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Wow. I I'm I go back. I'm hearing your thoughts on this, and I'm going back to the time when you went to England. And by the way, if the audience doesn't know, Ali, he's a great teacher when it comes to teaching French. He so much so loves what he does that he tries to improve upon it on a regular basis. And one of the things he did recently was participate in an improv class by going and traveling to England and to learn from this actress who helps people teach using improv. You you come from a history of, especially in World War II, of resistance and of people that wanted to help others. And I will recall one specific actor who was part of the French resistance during World War II and who was Jewish himself, who was world renowned. He was on a lot of TV shows in America, and I'm going to talk about Marcel Marceau. For those of you young people who don't know who he is, he's a famous mime. Um, his character Bip the Clown was parodied in a bunch of shows and cartoons during his time because he was so prolific. He was so prolific. But to be able to act without saying a word and people laugh, people cry, people feel the emotion, and it's because and this is something integral to improv, you emoting using your going back to the theme we talked about earlier, the entire body to show emotion. So without saying a word, he can make you cry or he can make you laugh, right? So the same is true for storytellers when it comes to words, crafting it in such a way that it's going to tug at your heartstrings and reel you in so that you are so immersed in that emotion, you're immersed now into the story. Last night I was on Miss Misha's show as a co-host. We do it once a month and we talk about faith, our faith as Christians. But it's to help with mindset and things like that. And we base it on the Jabez prayer in the Bible. And Jabez essentially prayed for an increases in his territory, and God gave it to him. There's not a pause, there's not a timeline. There's it as soon as he finished his prayer, the his prayer was answered. I'm talking about this because during the course of the conversation, I talked about my mom. And talked specifically about a time when she was in hospice. And this was towards the end of her time on this earth. And I talked about not wanting her to leave and how my siblings and my father, my dad, all prayed for her not to leave us. And she had not been breathing for an entire hour. And by some miracle, because we prayed and because we were crying and all manners of grief between all of us, my mom returned to us. Now, I won't go into the entire story, but I, out of the corner of my eye, noticed that one of the people in that room, in that Zoom call, was wiping away tears. And they may not have been in a situation like mine. I don't know what their situation was or why they were crying. But the fact of the matter is, when I was crying, they were crying. And as a storyteller, you know, you know, you've made an impact. Now, if you're a comedian and you're laughing at yourself and telling a story and you see the crowd laughing just as you are laughing at yourself or laughing at the moment or laughing at the story you're telling, you know you've struck a chord. And you've struck a chord as a result of getting in touch with that emotion. Earlier on, I talk about, and it's the rule of engagement, one of the rules of engagement, it's do not fear adversity. Usually with adversity comes what? Some type of feeling, an emotion. And I will say the same about emotion. Do not fear it. Harness its power to connect with your audience. Thoughts, Ali?
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I realize also that it's it is brave. It takes courage to share our story and our stories, especially when it's personal, when it's something that is really dear to our heart, like sharing about our beloved ones that are in illness or that are were moving to another world. And for me, I see two things. First, to really deep core the intentionality of sharing that. What is our intention for sharing that? Because also when you are in front of an audience and we share these kind of stories, it's also to have what is the intention behind. Like you can share this if your audience is a crowd of people in the healthcare. So it's really about telling the right stories to the right audience, and say, okay, I might not share this aspect because it's either it's deep personal, or maybe because it will not probably resonate for the theme of my share. So it's about avoiding to dilute our message of things that might not be relevant to what our audience is looking for. And if it's a funny conference, a funny event, I think you are not going to share some personal sad things. So it's also to realize that. Um, and I realize also that it's about, for me, emotional management of us when we share stories. How much time when I was sharing some stories, I was so caught in my emotions that I was crying at some point that I was not even able to express. So that's a tricky one, because you don't know if when you share such a personal story, if you are going to be able to manage to continue to share without completely cracking your nerve, and to not be able to be the captain of your ship, because your emotions are like waves, and maybe it will destabilize you at some point. And so it's really it's a tough one when it comes to share so much vulnerable things to the audience. Not only the intention, but also, will you be able to manage that, to manage your emotions? You might cry in front of the audience, you might have a pause, but at some point you have also to hook up and to continue your share. else it will be like and it's really emotional management for me, and that's why sometimes I share to someone, and it's so overwhelming that I'm done. I'm really emotionally myself sharing my story. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I think the words emotional intelligence is really what's needed when you're trying to use it, when you're trying to use emotion as a creator. Because you could use emotion in a wrong way, right? If your intent is to connect, then you're going to have to be, again, it's that delicate dance, right? You don't want to over exaggerate or go into extreme detail sometimes so that you're traumatizing your audience regarding the story. That's not what you want. You want them to understand it from that emotional perspective. You don't want to isolate them and say to them, "Hey, this is an emotion that everybody feels and you should be feeling this way." That's not how it works. You're not trying to dictate something. You're trying to entice and bring people into the story, not repel them. And so it again, you just have to understand how that's going to play out. But I will say this, under emotional intelligence, right? You you have to look at it like this. There's going to be times when, and I'll just say it this way, you're going to piss people off. And maybe that sometimes is the thing that you want to elicit if you want to have a call to action, right? If you're trying to help people understand a, a disservice to a person or community of people, you're going to want to give them the raw details of why you support one side or the other. And so to do that, you have to use emotion to be able to get people to say, enough is enough. Let me do something about this. And I'll give you a prime example. In the United States, for years, the organization that tries to help the stray animal population in America used a song, the Sarah McLachlan song, um, "In the Arms of an Angel," and every time the song played on TV, you knew that imagery of dogs in horrible situations in kennels across America, that imagery was going to be coming up next, and I knew it, and so did my wife, and my wife hated it because it really made her cry to see animals in that situation. And I'd be like, "Nope, I'm going to change the channel immediately." But here is a really prime example of one, the song was sad, it's melancholy, and it just brings out the emotion in people. It's related to human beings, but here we are using it for pets and animals and other living beings that are not human, right? We don't necessarily attach emotional intelligence with animals, but we do. And so here is that prime example of that. That story in song and the imagery in that story on TV together, coupled together, was powerful as a call to action for people to support the organization so that these animals would have another chance at life. You were so appalled at the situation. You were so saddened that this would be happening to another living being that you were spurned into doing something about it. Some of us would choose to ignore it and change the channel. And some of us picked up the phone and called and said, "How can I help? How much money do you need? Can I do this incrementally each month?" Whatever it is. But I just wanted to, again, just give examples, show what's going on, and encourage you not to fear emotion when telling a story. Don't fear the adversity or the emotion that comes with that adversity because we know it as human beings and we know what that feels like. So it can help if you're really trying to get a message across. This is how you can do it. Now, some people manipulate that and they can, and it works, but that's why. That's why they can manipulate that because emotion really, and I'll use the word, can trigger something in someone.
Well, they can manipulate that, but at the same time, they will not control the reaction because at some point,
No,
people are doing A and expecting the results of A, but I might choose another path because I feel activated. I'm going to be repelled. So what you said was really interesting. Is to I was reflecting on two things. First, it's not saying to bury our heads in the sand to not feel our emotions because at some point, could we do to feel our emotions, but not to at some point to decide to not be driven by them and to not drawn to say, okay, this I'm right now in the moving sand, but rather than to avoid the problem, I'm going to find a solution to get out of my moving sand. So it's the action that I take to not be drawn in my emotion and say, okay, let me use the tools that I have, breathe, thinking about anything else. And then something that I realized also that as a storyteller, it's really also important that we can let our audience help us. I think in any presentation, we are the old way was okay, let me wear all the mountain, but then we can also remove some pressure from our shoulders and ask question to the audience, and then by doing that we will have less pressure and we'll have more attention to someone in the audience that is happy to share or to help us. In fact, it's about also the getting out the drama triangle. the persecutor, savior, and victim, and to realize that our audience is not our savior or victim. It could help us. How could our audience help us if we are finding overwhelming also? And it's like also having pauses, trying to digest and to foster interaction. Because if I'm not anymore appealed to the TV mode. That's why, for instance, in our session, I value the presence of our replay team. Thank you, the replay team, because I was, as aside Lisa, that I welcome. I was not seeing any other interactions, and although I'm not preparing in advance, like sharing this event 1 or 2 or 5 days ago, I wanted to make it happen, and that's why I'm. But at the same time, we are not on the TV. If you are watching the replay team, feel free to share any comments in days or weeks or months. I will check the comments because it's about engaging our audience, and that our audience might not listening live. They might listen to us weeks or months or years later, and it's all that what matters. Even if we are impacting one person, we are successful because it's at least we are. It's like the quote of Ralph Waldo Emerson, that anyone that is breathing is successful, and also that we are lucky to be part of 7% of the whole human history population. We are 8.2 billion, and there are probably 108 billion people that ever lived on Earth, minus or more. I don't. But at some point, we are born, and then we will leave our body. And between the point A and point B, whether it's days or weeks of hours or 100 years, we are successful, because even if we are leaving this world few hours after birth, we are making um, success because our parents are happy to welcome us in this world. So that's my share. We can still have 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up. And thank you, Jay, for allowing me to share your energy. And also, I hear you when you share my passion about French, and I'm going to foster that in the next days and weeks to put intention. It's not my core energy, but I'm going to do that, to have a call to action, to look about my services and my offering, because I want to bring value to our audience, as you are bringing value to you being present and you writing this book. So, about emotions, what are your last thoughts?
When we write, especially when we're writing from experience, 9 out of 10 times that experience is rooted in emotion. 9 out of 10 times when we write, that experience is rooted in emotion. Let that sit for a minute. Our brain and our heart can recall our past because for the majority of those experiences, there's an emotion attached to it. Whether it be sadness, whether it be joy, whether it be love, whether it be just plain old nostalgia, each part of those aspects It's an emotion. Our body and our mind. Oh, I gotta share this real quick. The other day, when Leslie and Paulette were talking, Leslie said this essentially, that there's a difference between your mind and your brain. Ooh, the brain is the physical thing, and your mind is your consciousness. Ooh, so good. And the reason it's so good is consciousness and even subconsciousness is a part of us. And each time we tap into our consciousness and subconsciousness, there is an emotion. And the two are not mutually exclusive. It's what makes us a person, a human being. And once we understand that, we can really hone in on our craft as storytellers to reach people, their minds, and their hearts on a conscious and subconscious level. This is storytelling. So, again, I just want to thank you, Ali. You know, you've graced my stage more than once and had some really good insights and really good stories to share. And so I wanted to do the same and reciprocate and join you in this book club. It really, you know, I didn't, I'm not doing this to grandize myself. I really want to help other people share their stories. I did not know exactly what was going to happen when I started doing story time with Jay and Friends. But now that I've realized how it can help humanity, how storytelling can really unify us, it's become my driving force. And I know that sounds kind of maybe pie in the sky or
No, it's like what I call des racines et des ailes, roots and wings. We need both. It's like the mind and the heart. The heart is the human physical organ, but it could be also the whole intention. Like, il a bon cœur, he has good heart. And we are not talking about the physical heart. We are talking about his actions, his energy. And the heart vibrations is even more powerful in the field of energetic field. The heart is more powerful, vibrating more powerfully than the brain, because the heart is the energy is more large than the energy of the brain. And thank you, Crystal, for joining. And in fact, it's about the fact that you share your culture. What is not shared is lost. And it's about relativity and also discovering new things. So I was noting new words. Like last evening, I'm going to share, if I have some time again. But last evening, I was really compelled about attending the event of Zachary Simon, someone I was meeting through Go Brunch. And he was talking about the stress and in the black community because he's a therapist, a black therapist. He was talking about his own language, the Congolese terms, and I noticed some words like Zola. I was remembering this because there is also a person named Émile Zola, the famous French writer. But Zola, Zola, is the joy. If I don't mix with other words, because he was talking about also Ngolo and Zaya, and so discovering cultures and language like Chelu, and also to notice into the spelling that the C and the H were capitalized because it is a same letter, like the O and the E together. Like when you are going to say cœur, Coeur, but no, the new spelling could be O and E separated, but at origin it was together, the O and the E. So the C and the H capitalized because the C and the H are considering as two letters, as one letter. Sorry, and Chelu, we could be all Chelu together, friends, frère, as you, and that your commitment. What I like between language enthusiasts is the commitment for each others to go to each other's space, like bare feet, meeting every people on your audience or people that you are interacting with in their space, removing your crappy shoes. No, your shoes are crappy, by the way, but removing your shoes and going bare feet in their space and dancing their own dance, learning their own language and their own cultures. That's why I'm really blessed because then I'm when you talk that 2 3 days ago was the mother international mother native language. And when you are making efforts to say, okay, Zuhus Mahasi, Chelu, um, half a day, when you are making the effort to talk someone else native language, like teşekkür ederim in Turkish, like arigato, even if you are not pronouncing well, you are making efforts. Then it's connecting from heart to heart. And as Maya said, they will remember how you made them feel, even if you are imperfect in your saying. That's why I'm loving words and languages. Originally, it was like for people pleasing, for being feeling included. But I realized it's also for connecting people. So I noticed that you are all really famous and really having a huge agenda. So next week, same day, I don't know if it will be same hour or not, but I will keep you posted. The eighth rule would be surprise and delight. Surprise and delight, unexpected and emotionally rewarding twists. I'm really blessed to have this session with you next week. And in the meantime, imagine, I hope that you can live 40 next years, but imagine you are leaving this world tomorrow. What is your departed message to this audience?
Get in touch with your emotions. Don't be afraid of it. Harness it so that you can help others resonate with your story so that they can share theirs. Thanks, Ali.
Zuhus Ma'asi. Bye and keep shining, everyone. We are